Well, ladies and gentlemen, just when you thought Somalian Congressional Representative Illhan Omar couldn't get any more unlikable, she had this to say. Take a look.
A lot of conservatives in particular would say that the rise in Islamophobia is a result not of hate, but of fear, a legitimate fear, they say, of quote-unquote jihadist terrorism, whether it's Fort Hood or San Bernardino or the recent truck attack in New York. What do you say to them?
I would say our country should be more fearful of white men across our country, because they are actually causing most of the deaths within this country. And so if fear was the driving force of policies to keep America safe, Americans safe inside of this country, we should be profiling, monitoring, and creating policies to fight the radicalization of white men.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Somalian Illhan Omar, a sitting U.S. Congresswoman, just labeled white men, roughly 30% of the American population, as society's greatest threat. And she's calling for government programs to both profile and monitor white men based solely on their race and their gender. This isn't just divisive, it's fundamentally racist. And now her true anti-white bias is out in the open, shining a light on her deeper, ulterior motives. And so, folks, let's be honest here for a moment. Illhan Omar's comments here absolutely exposes the glaring and obvious hypocrisy of the progressive left. As you all know, progressives like to preach all day about racial inclusivity, but when push comes to shove, they just scapegoat white men for every problem under the sun. Imagine the outrage if a conservative politician said brown or black men were violent, dangerous, and needed federal monitoring for national security purposes. They would be publicly crucified. Their career would be in ashes. But when Illhan Omar says it about white men, crickets, nobody cares. Ladies and gentlemen, the double standard here is absolutely astounding. The far-left media and the radically progressive political apparatus is totally comfortable normalizing racist anti-white rhetoric as they play coverage for divisive figures like Illhan Omar, just so long as it suits their radically progressive political agenda. And you know what? Let's talk facts here for a moment, because the data doesn't lie. FBI crime statistics going back for decades show that white men are actually underrepresented in violent crime categories. In fact, numerous other racial demographics in the United States have significantly higher rates of violent crime, yet Illhan Omar decides to cherry-pick white men as her boogeyman. And why? Because it fits her radically progressive anti-American narrative. Her claims aren't just baseless, they're a deliberate distraction from the real threats facing America every day, like illegal immigration, which, by the way, she openly supports, and radical Islamic terrorism, which she has historically downplayed. In fact, Illhan Omar once dismissed the 9/11 attacks, saying they were not that big of a deal. Let that sink in. She's more focused on vilifying white men in America than addressing actual international radical Islamic terrorism. But you know what, folks? Here's the truth. This type of behavior coming from Illhan Omar isn't just a once-off. No, this is who she is. This is what she does. This is all part of the ongoing radical progressive agenda to sow division in the country and to distract from the radical progressives' political failures on crime, border security, and the economy. But you know what, folks? Why don't we quickly run through Illhan Omar's track record here? Just in the last couple of years, Illhan Omar has downplayed the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Like we said earlier, she said they just weren't that big of a deal. She's also been actively giving illegal immigrants advice and tips on how to evade ICE apprehension and deportations. She infamously endorsed a massive fraud scheme in Minnesota where her fellow Somalian community members embezzled over $250 million worth of COVID relief funds, the single biggest taxpayer scam in United States history. Oh yeah, and let's not forget, it's almost an absolute certainty that she married her own brother to help him gain United States citizenship. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a woman, this is a congresswoman that has absolutely zero respect for the country that accepted her as a refugee. She blames white men, the very people who built this nation, for all of her personal problems, while hand-waving terrorism and helping illegal immigrants flood our borders. In truth, Illhan Omar's statements vilify a core and foundational segment of America, hardworking, patriotic white men who make up about 30% of our nation's population. She's painting them as violent extremists to portray herself as a persecuted victim, and this isn't just wrong, it's dangerous. It alienates and demonizes well over half the country, fueling division at a time where this country needs unity. And you know what, folks? Why don't we go ahead and address the elephant in the room? If white men in America are so evil and violent and dangerous, why did Illhan Omar, a Somalian immigrant, decide to come to the country that we built in the first place? If she's really so oppressed, she's free to return to Somalia anytime she wants, where she won't be surrounded by the people that she claims are such a threat, the evil American white men. Her actions scream hypocrisy, and Americans across the country are fed up. And now, folks, I'll tell you what, this type of racist, anti-white rhetoric is exactly why the Democratic Party is imploding right now. Their national approval ratings right now are at historic record lows because Americans, of all races, by the way, are sick of being lectured and divided. Here's the reality. Illhan Omar's radically progressive agenda doesn't just alienate white men alone. No, it pushes away anyone who values American unity. The America First movement, on the other hand, is about real solutions, secure borders, strong law enforcement, and economic prosperity for all Americans. President Trump's America First agenda uplifts the entire nation, holding leaders accountable and rejecting Illhan Omar's radically progressive, divisive nonsense. So, ladies and gentlemen, here's my final thought here. This woman, Congressional Representative Illhan Omar, has got to be kicked out of Congress. If this type of radically progressive, racially divisive rhetoric doesn't warrant losing a congressional seat, I don't know what does. Right now, the entire country collectively is trying to put America first, which means we don't have time for Illhan Omar's radically progressive, anti-white, racist nonsense. Now, folks, before we wrap up with today's video, I want to say real quick that I've actually gone ahead and made a community Facebook page where I'll be posting additional news and updates as it relates to all of this. So if you guys use Facebook, check out the pinned comment down below and give that page a follow. But everyone, that is going to be a wrap for today's video, so please go down below and drop a comment. Let me know what you think about all of this. Please like the video while you're down there. As I said earlier, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton with my daily struggle here on YouTube. Thank you all very much for tuning in today, and of course, as always, stay safe.